Hello. Good morning, everybody. Let's get started. So this workshop will be about Behat, it's a behavior-driven development framework for PHP, Java, Windows 2022. We will do some exercises. We'll try to set it up. First for 2.7. So I hope all of you have an installation of 2.7 on your laptops. It will also be nice if you have Composer installed. I'll show how to do that if you haven't. But at least 2.7 to start with will be nice. At the end of the presentation I will also show how to do it in 2.8, but you will probably not have time for everybody to do it individually, but I'll show you how it's going to do that. So, first of all, a little bit about me. My name is Pieter Frenssen. I've been a Drupal developer for about 7 years. I currently work at the European Commission, mainly to help them with setting up testing and continuous integration on their, they have like 70 Drupal websites. And I also do general Drupal consulting with them. Yeah, you can see my account on Drupal if you want to see what I've worked on. I'm a co-maintainer for the scheduler module, and I've contributed also a few smaller modules. And I'm also working a little bit on Drupal. But a lot of my focus is on testing. And we've gone through a whole history of testing in Drupal. First from doing no tests, or only manual tests in Drupal 6. In Drupal 7 we wrote our own testing framework, Simple Test, which was based on an existing PHP library, but we adapted it to our own needs, which worked really well for a while, but has some limitations. Now in Drupal 8 we are using, at the moment, 3 different testing frameworks in core. So we are using still Simple Tests. We are using PHP units for doing unit tests, and we are using the web, the browser test base, which actually has a built-in browser in Drupal core. It's only very little use for the moment. It's only like a proof of concept. But it's actually included in core, so you can use it for your own projects. And then there is another common way of testing, that's Behat. Behat is not in core yet, but fortunately it's quite easy to set it up. Behat is actually quite a different approach to traditional testing. Behat originates from a way of thinking that's called behavior-driven development. Behavior-driven development is not really about testing, it's actually more about improving communication. So behavior-driven development aspires to be a bridge between the development team and the client. Typically there are a lot of obstacles between those two teams. The developers are highly technical, the business people, they're very much aware of their business needs. And often there's a difficulty in communicating, especially from the business to the developers, to say what they really want in their product. So they would say like, oh yeah, we want this, we want a web shop, we want to behave in a certain way. The developers will think about it and they will make their own interpretation of the matter. And in the end, when the product is delivered, the client might suddenly realize like, oh, this is actually totally not what I had in mind. We wanted something different, and behavior-driven development is mainly trying to solve this problem. It's trying to really allow the client to convey what they really want in their website. By doing it, by expressing their needs in a really structured way. So, what does this achieve? We will have a shared language between the developers and the clients. It will be a language that both of them understand. It will not be highly technical, and it will be mainly focused on the business value, but it's expressed in a way that also the developers can understand the business value really well. We will have a better way of planning our projects, because behavior-driven development is based on Agile. I guess most of you have already worked with Agile. So it's very similar to user stories. Clients will be familiar with it as well. it provides an exact specification, and the specification is written in the DOR, which is a definition of ready, which is an agile concept. So actually, in your definition of ready, you would say, we need a Behat test scenario in our ticket before we can even start development. So the steps will need to be written beforehand. It also provides acceptance criteria for the client. So in our definition of done, we will add a line that says like, our test scenario should be passing. And this test scenario can be executed manually by our client. So our client can go to their site, they can go to their web shop, click on certain buttons, enter data in certain fields, press a submit button and verify that it's exactly as they specified. Another thing is that we have better documentation, something that's totally lacking with all the projects that everybody has ever built. If we use behavior-driven development, we will have documentation for every single feature that has been built for the project. Because we will have exact steps that can be taken, we will have a ticket that says like, I need to be able to add a product to my web shop, and there will be exact steps listed on how we can achieve that. This documentation, it will be always current, because your test will fail if your functionality changes. So you will be forced to update your test scenarios. So these test scenarios will always work, and they can be used as a basis for writing actual user manuals, because you can give these steps to a technical writer who can then follow these steps, who can understand the software really easily, and then can write the proper technical documentation for us. And then finally, what we're basically all here for, we can improve the quality of our projects. We ensure that our specification is met, because we have a contract with our client that says like, okay, this is how the functionality should work. We have implemented it as required. We can have QA people and testing engineers to validate it manually, and our product owner can also check these tests to see if they run, and we can automate as manager on this one. So the basis of this whole thing is not Behat, but it's actually Gherkin. Gherkin is a language which was developed like in the mid-90s, I believe, for the Ruby project called Cucumber. Cucumber is like the mother of Behat. And Gherkin is a very free-form programming language, you could say. I don't think it's like Turing complete or anything, but it's like a structured way of describing steps that users can take in a testing scenario. This language is understandable, aspires to be understandable by everybody who is involved in the project. So the business can read it, very importantly. Our developers that work on the project can read this. The machines that run the test can read it. Then also, this language is domain specific. So we actually adapt the language used to the project that we're building. If you're building a web shop, we might use a totally different language. We'll be talking about products and checkouts, and like if you're building a grocery site, it might be totally different. So let's have an example of this. This is a test scenario written in Gherkin. First of all, we start with the user story, very common in Agile. So we say, in order to promote specific products, as a marketing manager, I need to highlight products on the homepage. This user story is intended to convey the business value of the thing we're developing to the developers. Because the developers often don't really understand what the business really wants. So the business says like, okay, we want to have this button on the sidebar, needs to lead to this page. And you will implement it. They might have very specific reasons for this. They might have had like research done, and they talked to a lot of the clients and really expressed like, okay, we want this thing there so we can easily get to another part of the site or whatever. So this actually explains that it's the marketing manager who came up with this idea. See, and the marketing manager is interested in highlighting products. It's not the visitor that's interested in this. We don't say, in order to see specific products, as a visitor of the website, I want to see products on the homepage. No, you speak from the business perspective. And then we have an actual test scenario, which in this case is very simple. So we view the product highlights. Given I have 3 product highlights, when I visit the front page, then I should see 3 highlighted products. This sounds very stupid, but it actually proves to our customer that if they enter product highlights, the 3 of them, they will be presented on the front page, and there will be only 3. There will not be 2, there will not be 5, there will be 3, which is to the business very important. So, to abstract this a little bit, these Gherkin language can be summarized completely in this. So, we start with the user story, which we call a feature in Gherkin. We give it a title, it can be anything, it's just to help us to find it. Then we say, in order to achieve a certain business objective, as a user role or persona or stakeholder in the project, I need to do a certain action to achieve my goal. And then we have 5 keywords in our test scenario, and those keywords are given, when, and, then, and but. So every line in our test will start with one of these 5 words. Now actually the joke in the Behat implementation of Gherkin is that we can interchange these words without any problem. So we could write given in front of every line and it would work fine. And the reason for this is, say that you have an action like creating a note on a page. You could also use that as a test. So you could write a single line test that says like, given I have a note on the page and it should not fail, because then you know that your note works. So then they say like, okay, if these things can be like interchangeable, then yeah, why not just like ignore actually the starting word? But it helps us in explaining what the test is doing. So when we use given, we say we have a precondition of the test. It's something that the site already needs to have before our test can start. So a precondition would be like, given I am logged in as an editor, or given I have 10 products on my website. Then when is an action that occurs. This is actually the action that initiates our test. So given I'm logged in as an editor, when I click on a button on the home page and I do some other action, then something should happen. Something that we can test. So we should go to a different page, or we should see a message that says our product has been created successfully, or something else. And sometimes we should check for negative cases. So we should check that a certain product is not available on our page, then we can use the but keyword. So but we do not see product B on our page. So it's very simple actually. Now you could think that it's so simple that your client can write these tests, but they should not do that. Actually, the best thing to do is that the developer, the client writes the user story, the developer sit together and write this scenario, and then the client approves the scenario before we start implementing. The clients will be very happy because after some time, a few months, they will be very able to write these things, but at the beginning they will be apprehensive. For developers, it's really easy to write this. Or product manager or anyone. So this is an example of an outline. So we do not only have sequential steps. We can actually reuse certain steps and replace inputs in our test. So this is a test with it's only a few lines, but actually tests quite a lot of functionality. So it's about liking users on our website. Say, given I am logged in as a certain user, when I visit the profile of one of my friends and I click on like, then I should see a certain number of likes. So let's start our test. So, given I am logged in as Cindy, when I visit the profile of my friend Cindy and I click on like, then I should see 0 likes. Because if I like my own profile, then my number of likes shouldn't increase. Now, if I'm logged in as Thomas and I visit the profile of Cindy and I click on like, my number of likes should increase to 1. If I log in as Thomas again and I visit the profile of Cindy again and I click on like again, my number should still remain at 1 because we cannot like certain people more than once. Then if Roger likes Stanley, then the number increases. If Roger likes Thomas, then Thomas likes us also. So this is a very simple test, but it's actually testing a whole range of conditions that we have programmed into our like module. So this shows the power of the system development. We can also use tables, so that we do not have to write line after line after line saying like, okay, we need to fill in a whole range of forms. So now we can just type the labels of the form elements, like username and email, and then just create a table and create all of these at once. So we have to just loop over the rows in the table and run these steps for these, so it's quite convenient. Alright, okay, enough with the theory. I hope you like it so far. Let's try to get it installed. I created a little GitHub repository that contains all the code that we will use in this example. So if you can go to GitHub and clone this repository, I hope you all have Git installed in your laptops. Then okay, it's so I call it the Behat workshop. Can you read this, by the way? Okay. So Behat actually has very few requirements. It's using a system which is called Mink. And Mink is a browser driver. So with Behat, you can actually drive real browsers. You could use Firefox, you could use Chrome or Internet Explorer to run your tests. Or you could use a simulated browser, a very popular one is called Boot, which is bundled with Behat. It's actually just doing calls to your website using Perl and saving those HTML files locally and then parsing them. So it's actually working like a browser, only it doesn't support JavaScript. And then you have a whole range of other browsers, like simulated browsers, like Zombie.js, other browsers that supports. And because Behat uses Mink, you can use all of these browsers. That's the nice part. So did everybody get this? Right. So the next thing we need is we need Composer. I got this line from the official documentation of Composer. So if you are in your Behat workshop folder and you execute this line, it should download a file called composer.var and place it in the folder. And to see if it works, you can execute the line at the bottom, PHP composer.var -- version, and then it should show you that you're using the latest development version of Composer. If anybody has trouble.
Is that a particular version, do you know? Because I've got 1 something already.
It's now we're at 1.0 or something. But yeah, Composer has been stable for a while, even though they're not. I don't think they have an official stable release. But it works quite well, so.
Okay.
Does anybody know what Composer is for? Because it's very, very nice software. Right, can I continue? Oh, this is one. So, how to install Behat? You can do it with one line of one single Composer command. So this is actually if you type the whole PHP composer.var thing, this means that we have it installed locally. We just have it downloaded locally. You also can install Composer globally on your system, but then you only have to type Composer. So if you have Composer globally, you can just type Composer prior to multiple installation. But if you just downloaded it locally, then you have to do the whole PHP Composer.var multiple installations. This might take some time on the Wi-Fi here, for the way. So it will download Behat, it will download Mink, it will download Gazelle, and a whole bunch of different.
I mean, you can do this in a particular location with regard to our 777 install?
No.
Right.
This these tests can be totally separate from your project. As I will show you later, you can test any website with this. It's not only Drupal sites. If you want to, you can test google.com with it. So it doesn't need to be included in your project. Now, as I will explain later, for Drupal 8, it's actually advised to install it inside your Drupal project. But, so is your installer going? And do you get the packages? I noticed yesterday that it can be really slow. And now that everybody's basically hammering the Wi-Fi at the same time, I think it might be quite slow. Yeah, it's not only the downloading that's slow, because it's also resolving dependencies, so it analyzes all the packages that it needs and then starts figuring out which dependencies, which exact versions are a good fit. That will take some time. So I suggest that everybody stops surfing until we have downloaded all the right packages. Yeah, so when the process completes, Behat will be installed in a vendor folder. So the composer by default places all the packages that are downloaded, all the third-party libraries, PHP libraries actually that you're using, into the vendor folder. And it will create a subfolder of the vendor folder which is called bin, and that will contain symlinks to the actual executables of all the command line tools that we have. So if you use Behat, you can find it in vendor/bin/Behat. So if you want to test it or Behat is working, you can type this command and type dash version or like dash help or something after that. Oh. And also in this vendor folder you will see all the other packages. So there will be make will be there, yeah, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Goes all. Anybody finished that? Yeah. On Windows, you should be able to use this if you use something like Sigma. But I don't have personal experience with that, but I've seen people use it successfully. So you need some functional console that's yeah, I can't really help with that, but I've seen people getting it to work. Yeah, but yeah. I don't know. Actually, this is not really only downloaded in Behat. This downloads a Behat Drupal extension, which is Behat as well as a whole lot of test scenario steps that are specific to Drupal. So we will have tests that would say like when I create a node, or when I see this block in this region, which is very Drupal specific, you won't find that in the regular Behat. And I also think if you download Behat by itself, you will also still need to compose. So, yeah. Right, so I see some hands over, so everybody downloaded it? Okay, only a few. Anybody is blocked or is it running?
Just need to
need some time.
Rate it.
can actually already continue a little bit. So the first thing you will do after Behat is downloaded is you will have to configure it. And as with a lot of modern PHP libraries, we can configure it by saving a configuration file in its directory. So in the case of Behat, we are saving a YAML file, and we put some information in this. Now, this is a lot to type, I know, but I've provided a branch in the repository that contains this, so you don't have to type it out. And you can also just go to the website of the Drupal extension and then click on the documentation, and then they will show you this. You can just copy paste it from there. It's quite easy. So what it's actually saying is we will have one test profile, which is called the default profile. You can have multiple. So say you're building a contributed module for Drupal and you have a Drupal 7 version and you have a Drupal 8 version, then you can actually create a Drupal 7 testing profile, a Drupal 8 testing profile, and with different configuration for both. So we also have test suites, which can say like, okay, we can execute a group of tests, and for this group of tests we need to have, for example, a Solar server installed or something specific. And then we have a whole bunch of context files. So if you already read these names, then you can get an idea about what these context files contain. So the Drupal context file, for example, contains all of the steps that are specific to Drupal. So, given I am logged in as a user with the role administrator, that's specific to Drupal. Given I have a certain block in a certain region. So, like a lot of core functionality is already there, and we will also add the popular contributed modules. We have a drush context, so we can actually execute drush commands in our tests, which is really handy if you need to clear the cache, for example. Do stuff like that. We have a message context, which interacts with the messages on the page, so you can see a status message, an error message, warning. And then we have the main context, which is actually standard from Behat, but it's adapted for Drupal, and this is using regular detection of HTML in the site. So form fields that are there, links, headings, HTTP responses, all kinds of stuff you want to test as generic things. In Behat you can have a lot of extensions, so these are like modules or plugins inside of Behat. And the one that we are most particularly interested in is the Drupal extension, it's this one. You also have the Wink extension, which will be driving our simulated browser, and we can like already configure it and say like, okay, by default we want to use the good browser, which uses curl and saves the HTML locally. We also want to use Selenium. If we can have it, Selenium can use Firefox and Chromium, Internet Explorer for that. We set up the base URL to our locally installed website. Behat really needs to know this because it needs to access our site. And then we have some settings for the Drupal extension. It doesn't even fit. Okay, Drupal extension has a black box driver. Black box means you cannot log into the site. So you can run tests against a Drupal site which is like hosted by somebody else. So if you want to test your competitors and see when the site breaks, sure, go ahead, use a black box driver for that. You have an API driver that allows you to use the full Drupal API in your tests. So if you want to quickly create an entity or do something with the API, you can do that. And of course, in order for Behat to find your Drupal code, you need to specify where your size is. So basically, for this whole thing, you copy paste it from the documentation on the Behat Drupal extension, and then you change this line, my site, so your base URL, and your root folder of your site. If you change these two, you're basically set up, because all the other configuration defaults have gone. So how far is everybody right now? Is it installed? Somebody's still waiting? Okay, perfect.
Can you flip back the page just to where the test stuff was, just so I can...
So in order to test if your Behat is successfully installed, you can do vendor./vendor/bin/Behat/version. And also try dash as help if you like, so you can already see all the commands that Behat offers you. Alright, so let's continue by making this YAML file. Yeah, okay, so it's in the fine manual. That bit.ly link is the link to the actual documentation because it's a really long URL, so I put it like this because it didn't fit on the screen basically. If you check out the branch which is called 1/Wikipedia, then you will find there a file which is called behat.yaml.dist. Behat.yaml.dist is a behat.yaml file, so it's a configuration file, but it does not contain any environment specific stuff like the base URL and the path of your tool site. Because you don't want to commit this, if you are working in a team, then you can assume that every developer on your team has a different base URL because everybody has their own preferences and has installed their Drupal site in a different directory. So if you would commit your own personal base URL and directory, then you like mess up all your colleagues' workflows because their tests wouldn't work anymore. And similarly, if you push your tests to have them tested on like Travis or automated testing infrastructure, you would need to put different configuration there. So the idea is that you have a behat.yaml.dist and you copy it then to behat.yaml, make your local changes, and then you're good to go. So I've also added this to the git log file so that you cannot accidentally commit it if you want to continue on this code base. Alright. So what does this file contain? This is a very minimal version of it. We're going to test Wikipedia to start with. So we don't need Drupal at all. We only need the basic Behat configuration. So we will use link to test. So we can test HTTP pages, and we will set our base URL to https em.wikipedia.org. So that's where our tests will run. Good. So what do we need to do? If we want to start using Behat after we have created our configuration file, we need to initialize our test suite. So if you can all type this command in it, it will create a few files for us. It will create a folder called features, and it will create a feature context file which will contain our own custom steps. Because Behat has a lot of steps built in, but they won't possibly cover our client needs because they have very specific needs, of course. So we will have to create a road at some point. I'll cover this later. So does this work for everybody? Yeah, okay. So, too fast, sorry. Yeah, so our tests are called features. This is a Behat term, which is of course very confusing to us developers, because you will never be sure if anybody is talking about Drupal features or Behat features from now on. Alright, everybody good? So, the first test. This test scenario is called find the Behat article. Given I'm on the home page, when I enter Behat for search, and I press go, then I should see the heading Behat. But I see the text Behat is an ancient town. This is actually, if we type in Behat in Wikipedia, it doesn't take us to the Behat software page, but it's also a town in India. So when I then click on Behat Computer Science, then I should see the heading Behat Computer Science, and I should see the text Behat is a behavior-driven development framework. So I've already put this test in your features folder. It should be there normally. Oh, yeah, it will be there if you check out do/Wikipedia. Can you see that test?
Features context, PHP finds the details does not allow to.
So it says it because you did the Behat init, and this feature context file is available.
Yeah.
Okay, if you remove the features folder, and then check out this blanks and it should work. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have tested it better. Alright, does everybody get it? Right. So, let's run it. To run tests, you just type vendor bin Behat without anything after it, and then it will run all the tests that it finds in the features folder. And it will output this. It might take some time on the Wi-Fi here, by the way. So you will see it running, and it will do step by step. You will see it executing every step that it takes. So if everything goes well, then you should see that you had one scenario which passed the 8 steps. The test failed. And why? What happened? You have to configure each feed that's in. In your it's like text each feed that's in. There is a line there. It's called state time zone.
That was what you checked out.
And then you have set it to UTC or like UTC zones. Then you will just This is very typical for Macs. So people that have Macs, you will need to edit your PHP.ini settings. By the way, this won't be the first time probably you've seen this error. It's very easy to fix. So it's a setting PHP.ini which is called date time zone. And just set it to UTC, for example. That's solved. Is anybody able to run the test successfully? Okay, perfect. I'll wait a bit for the rest of things. Is anybody blocked? Anybody needs to know? Alright, so now of course the question is, how do we know which steps we can use in our tests? Because reading this is very easy, but of course if you type this differently then it wouldn't work. So there is a command in Behat which you can use to list all your built-in step definitions. And this command is vendor bin Behat -di, and di stands for definition info. So a step definition is one line of a test scenario, so a definition, and then di gives all the information about the definition. And then you will see things such as given I am not logged in, or given I am logged in as a certain username, or given an type content with the title, which might seem like gibberish, but given we have an article content with this certain title, this will actually create an article with this title for us if you're using beautiful extension. And this slash means that, okay, depending on if we have an article or a page, then the human readable text you would say given a page or given an article. So this just says like you can use either this or the other, and then the content part is optional. So you could write given an article with the title, or given a page content with the title. Whenever you see this double column thing, it means that in your test you have to write it within between the little codes. Some other things, when I visit a certain path in my site, when I click on a link, when I enter a certain value for a field, when I press on a certain button, form submission button. When I do any of these things, then I should see a certain text on the page, but I should not see a certain link. So, in effect, there are more than 100 of these pre-built steps. You can get already very, very far in your testing without writing any custom code. I think if you go totally through the interface and you will only do steps like clicking buttons, entering text, and you can probably test most websites with the built-in commands. And writing these tests is very easy and very cheap. So actually there is no reason, even for small client projects, to not use any testing. It will save you time on maintenance later on. It will save you from regressions occurring. It will make your client more satisfied with your work, and it will make your developers a lot more satisfied because they will have confidence that the things they build today will not be broken tomorrow. So I can really suggest everybody to start using this. You know now how easy it is to install it, and then you can do a lot of stuff. You can talk to your stakeholders and convince them of using this, and even if they're not convinced, you can still use it without having a huge impact on your budget, because it will only take a few minutes to write these things. Alright, so is everybody good? Okay, let's get to the stuff. But first, something else. So there are a lot of built-in steps, but some of these things you shouldn't really use. So there are things that says like, then I should get a certain HTTP response. Why shouldn't we use this? Because we are improving the communication with our clients. The client doesn't know when an HTTP response is. So we shouldn't say, then I should see a text maxing a certain regular expression, because the clients, they will just go screaming and they will never want to look at those tests again. I should see a number of HTML elements on the page, or my cache. What the hell is a cache? I don't know. I mean, cron, drush commands, Ajax. So what you should do instead is you should talk to your client and figure out what they do understand. So instead of saying, I should see a 403 HTTP response, no. I should see the text page not found, you know. No, I shouldn't see a certain text with a regular expression. No, I should see the welcome message. Your client will know what the welcome message is. You behind the scenes, you can figure it out. No, I should see 5 blog posts. I shouldn't see a lot of HTML elements on the site. And I should certainly not wait for Ajax to finish, but I should just wait for the autocomplete suggestions to appear, which is basically the same thing, but the client still understands this. It's quite easy to write these aliases by the way. So, alright, okay, now testing to all. We have a basic configuration file, that's in Wikipedia, so we need to add some stuff to it. So we have to add our Drupal step definitions. The feature context, which is a special file which contains our own custom step definitions that we will write for our own specific project. We have to change our page URL, not to no longer test Wikipedia, but our local website that we have installed. And then we say, okay, we will use the API directly for Drupal, and our Drupal folder is installed here. I've supplied this as you can check out the new branch now. So you should have the 3-Drupal branch. If you check it out, you will get a new Behat.yaml.dist. So this contains default values that base URL won't work for you. So copy it, then rename it to Behat.yaml, and then edit it with your favorite editor. I don't assume everybody to use Vim, but you can if you want. And then you have to change 2 things in that file. So the base URL. So if you have your Drupal site installed at like HTTP localhost / Drupal or something, then you can use that. And then you have to put the path to your Drupal installation. If anybody doesn't have Drupal installed, then I suggest that you follow along with your neighbor maybe. So is there anybody has trouble with that? Oh yeah, by the way, you see some other things in the Behat YAML file, like for example these selectors. So if you are using a different theming, for example, you sometimes your viewer might change the CSS classes that you're using in your website. So if you have different, like for example, the messages have a different class, but in order to detect if an error message is in the page, then you should change this class. And also these are different for 777 and 8. So you have to be careful there. Was everybody familiar with this? I'm just following along so you can see if it works. Alright, so I provided a test. An example test. So our client has come to us and has said that like, look, it's really important that we have views on the website. The developers have made this test scenario, the clients have approved it. So what we want to achieve is that given we have some nodes, like we have a news article node type, we'll have to build this. We have two articles in it, say an article with the title article 1 and the body, the first article, and then we have a second article, the title article 2, the body. Then if you are an anonymous user, you should be able to go to the news page, and on the news page you should see a heading called news. And we should see both articles there, and we can detect that by seeing that we have a link to article 1, and we have the text, the body text of that article there, and the same for article 2. So this test should be there in your features folder. Now, if I try to run this test, I will have a little problem. So, oops, my test fails. Of course my test fails because I don't even have a news article content type on my website. And I don't have a news view. So this is pure test-driven development now. We start with a test that fails. And we have to implement it. And as soon as this test turns green, we will know that we have met our client specification and we can stop working and stick it. So what do we need to do? We need to create a news article content type, node type, and we have to create a view, which is called news. Let's look again. So news article content type, it should have a title and a body. We should have a path, news, and on that path we should have a view with the heading news, and it lists our articles. Now, this is something that's really easy to build in Drupal. So let's see who can build it the fastest, who can get a test screen as soon as possible. I might have a t-shirt for you.
Because using desktop, it doesn't include the database settings in the settings bar. Because
Okay, I'm done. Who's done? I practiced this yesterday. So I just created the content type with the basic default settings. I called it news article. You're done?
Yeah.
Excellent. Is your task clean?
Yes.
Perfect. I hope mine is too. Okay. Very nice. So yeah, this is what you should see at the end if you want to test. So it should say that all steps of passing everything should be green. And green of course means that everything's okay. Anybody else finished? Okay, good. Is anybody blocked? Missing help?
I'm using everyday desktop. And because I'll show you some video, I was just trying to fix it. But it tries to do it for
It's inside a vending machine or something.
the no. So Mac app. Like Mac. Yeah. So if I go to the bottom, I'm running database and then it comes up with PHP. It does this. Yeah. So the question is,
Yeah, where is that file?
where is that file? Just when I run the test, it looks like it's looking for the database.
Yeah, what's happening is, so Behat is actually mixed up as well, so it's looking.
Yeah.
Does this site work if you visit it in the browser?
Oh yeah. I was just going to see if that's okay.
Yeah. Can you check your root path? This is says very specifically that you can guess.
No, I guess I'm going to change that.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't need a training or such.
And if you go into the folder and then you try to push the status.
From it's that one.
Yeah.
Oops. Reading over my shoulder.
And I think we should probably find a ticket that people extension that we should support our I don't know how it's works including why it's not in the database because I think it's just going into that folder and then loading index of PHP.
He's making assumptions that you can look at.
Yeah. Let's look at the data.
Yeah. Let's see what I can figure out. Yeah, thanks.
Alright, so So what it's doing, so why is this test passing? Because if you look to your website, then you see they're not there, right? So when the first line of the test says given, I have 3 news articles. So it's actually creating those news articles. It's running the test. And after the test ends, it will remove all of the text content that it has created from the test. So if you would set a breakpoint here, you can set a breakpoint by typing then I break. If the test reaches the breakpoint, it will ask you to press enter in the console before it continues. So then it will run up to that point, and then you can look into your website, and then you will see that there's no actually there. Yeah. No, it's the chip. Slash.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't stop tension.
Yes. So the reason why you should always clean up everything that you create during the test, because it would otherwise imagine that you have like a view with a pager, and you have to test like, okay, I create 11 items and I only have 10 items on the first page and then I have 1 item on the second page. If you would not delete your nodes after your test, then the first time you're going to test it will be fine. The second time you're going to test, you would suddenly have 22 nodes and the test would fail because it would say like, oh, I have too many nodes here. So that's the reason that you should always clean up after the test. If you now go back to the console, you created it to yourself. Yeah. Alright, and now you can press enter here and then you put the test. Okay, anybody else any questions? Alright, congratulations, you can already test Google sites now. Now let's get into a bit more technical things. How to build your own step definitions. Alright, so our client is not satisfied with our lengthy test. Client says, I just want to have the line here that says, when I visit the news page, okay, I see my heading news, but I should just be able to see that there are 3 news articles. This is a step that's very specific to our project, because our project has a news rule. Not all projects have this, so you won't find this in the default steps. If you check out branch code 4/custom, then you will find the code there. So we have to implement this. If we run our test now, without implementing this, then Behat will inform us about a little problem. Did everybody check out the branch? So it's branch code 4-custom. So if you would run our test suite, then Behat will suddenly say like, okay, in one scenario we have one undefined step. Our feature context, which is our code file that will contain our custom steps, it has missing steps. Please define them, and it already gives us a snippet that we can use, copy paste it in the feature context file so we can start building it. So it already says, so Behat will put an @ sign in front of your step definition so it can recognize. You can have a lot of documentation, of course, and it's encouraged to write a lot of documentation. But if you have put an @ sign and then one of the 5 keywords there, then it will know that this is actually a step definition which you get. So it says then I should see that we call an arg1, argument 1. It doesn't know what we mean, it doesn't understand our English. And then it suggests the method name, puts the argument 1 already in the list of arguments. And then to satisfy the code base, it will say, it will throw an exception which is called a pending exception, and this actually means to do. So we are aware of the problem, we put it to do in the code, and then it should be fine. Now, it would be not so easy to have to copy pastes from the terminal into the code again every time we encounter this. So, Behat has an option that's called append snippets. If we run our test and our test contains new step definitions that we have not created in code yet, and we add append snippets to it, then it will actually put this example code right there in the feature context file, which is very helpful. And then it will inform us and say like, I should see 3 news articles, this definition has been added to it. So if you try to run this, then you should magically see that method appearing in your feature context file. The feature context file is then the folder features/bootstrap/feature context.feature. Okay, is that working well? Now, the code that Behat suggests is this code, but it's not really Drupal-y, you know. When people are writing Drupal tests, you would be hard-pressed to find a function, a method in your whole Drupal site which is called I should see news articles. In Drupal, typically, if we have a test function, we will call it an assert. Also, arg1 is very vague. We can use this like, we can better replace it with count or number, or that we at least know that we are expecting a number here. So what I actually suggest is that you change this code into the following. Then I should see double column number, a number of news articles, and we will rename the method to assert news article count. This very well explains what this method is doing, right? So it will assert that a certain number of news articles are on the page. And this is the actual code that will perform the test. This might seem difficult and not easy to figure out how you can write this, but I basically just copied this from the Drupal context. There are a lot of context files already included in your the code, and these are called like Drupal context, main context, push context, and so on. You can find them in your Behat YAML file, and they contain a lot of code that's testing stuff on the page. You can just copy that line from there and change it to what you need. I think there is a bug here, but because this should be div node dash use dash node, because this is for Drupal 8. So actually, what this code is doing, in our class, we have a session. A session is a user which is surfing our test website. We can ask the session for data about the current state of what a user is doing on our site. If the user visits a certain page, then the page will already be loaded in the memory, so it will be available for us. So we have a lot of methods here available, and one of these methods is elements count. So we can count elements, and then we can say, okay, what do we want to count? Which mechanism do we want to use to discover elements on the page? And we say like, okay, we're familiar with CSS, so we will use a CSS selector to find the articles on the page. If you are familiar with XPath, for example, you can use that as well. But for this use case, CSS is very easy. So we say like, okay, we want to look for divs on our page. And the div should have a class called node-use-article. Actually, in Drupal 8, it's just use-article. And then, so it's an elements count. So we assert that it's actually that number. So one line of code, and we can test this. So it should be in your branch, I think. Let's look. the example code is actually in a branch called 5-custom. You might have already inferred that we're doing an incremental count here. Alright, so I had it wrong in the slides, but in the code is correct. You can also see that here at the top it says snippet accepting context. That's the mechanism that Behat uses to actually be able to inject these snippets into our code. So to check if there are any classes that have snippet accepting context, and then that's very nice. So yeah, that's all you need. If we would run the tests in that branch now, then if everything goes well, the test should be green and our custom step should be tested. So I'm going to try that. Alright. Okay, so I've run my test, and it says given I have news article contact, 3 articles, I'm not logged in. When I visit news, then I should see the heading news, and I should see 3 news articles. So it works. If I would change my test to say like 4 or something, then it should fail, of course. Otherwise, we do it right. So let's try that. Alright, so I changed to test if there would be 4 articles, and my test fails, and Behat informs me 3 elements matching CSS, div, no news article found on the page, but it should be 4. So Behat is actually already telling us that, like, hey, you told me there would be 4, I only found 3. If you would run this code on like an automated test infrastructure and a test bot, then this would really help you to figure out what's wrong. You can, like, I'll show you another noise. If you type -vvv, that means like being really verbose, then it will show more information. See, it will show the actual HTML on the page. So if you need to debug on a remote server or something, then you can pass this VVV option, and then you can actually see the HTML that was output on the page, so you can look what is wrong there, because it can sometimes be difficult to figure it out. And it will also show back traces if you have a bug in your code and like an exception occurs or something like that. Yes.
Just a stupid question maybe, but once it's created the articles, it tears down and removes the articles when complete?
Yes, yes.
Right, okay, sorry. I was just looking there and seeing no articles and thinking, oh.
Yeah. So there is a mechanism built into Behat. So you can, it's like hooks. So you have certain hooks that you can execute before your test starts or after your test ends. And one of them is called like the after scenario. It's a technical hook, but it's, yeah, I don't remember what it's called. So if you would be the developer that implements the node functionality in Behat, then you would create an after scenario step which cleans up all the nodes you create. Every time you create one, you keep track of it. In your class, you just like add it to an array, then you loop over the array and delete all of them again. Yeah. And the main reason to clean up is because you want to be able to run your tests more than once. If I would run this test twice and my nodes would still be there, then there wouldn't be 3 nodes, there would be 6, and my test would fail. So it's really necessary to clean up. Alright. We only have 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk a little bit about Selenium. Now this is not something I expected you to install on your machines, because I've seen from many people that Selenium can be really hard to install on some machines. For me, I only had to type pacman-s Selenium standalone, and it was there. But on some systems it might be hard. But yeah, there is documentation on the Selenium website on how to do that. But I'll show you how it works, because it's quite interesting. So Selenium, as I said before, it's an actual browser driver that can drive things like Firefox and Chrome. How we can initiate this is if we put a tag in our tests, and the tag is called JavaScript. So I already had one tag here. I haven't mentioned this before, but if you want to use the Drupal API in your tests, for example, like to create nodes, these nodes are created by internally calling node create. It's much faster than clicking to the interface. So you have to use the tag @API if you want to use the Drupal API. So if you add the tag @JavaScript, then make will use Selenium instead of the standard boot browser. So I simply have to do this. If I save this file and run my test, then normally the browser should pop up and you should see it performing the test. Yeah, that was really fast. So it will actually launch Firefox, and then every call, every visit we do, every field we fill in, every button we click, all of those things will be actually done in the browser. It can be really easy to debug your tests if something is wrong and you don't know why it's going wrong. Then get your Selenium up and running. By the way, Selenium is just a Java application, and you can start it and it will run in the terminal window. So you just have to type like java-jar Selenium, and then it will start, and it will run until you close it. So it will run in the background, and it will listen for any commands that come, and if these commands arrive, then it will pop up your browser, and it will execute the commands. It's actually very transparent like that. I set it up like 2 years ago, and I've never looked back. So it's really nice. Some good tricks. If you use the browser, actual JavaScript will be executed on the page. So you will need to do things like wait for the Ajax caller to finish, because if you don't use JavaScript, then there won't be any Ajax request, because Ajax needs JavaScript. So your code will run differently. So you might see suddenly, if you switch Selenium on, that your tests fail because it goes too fast. Your Ajax thrower is turning, and it tries to already detect, for example, your autocomplete suggestions, and they're not there yet. So then you have to add lines like then I wait for Ajax to finish, which is fine while you're developing, just remove them and you present them to the client. And you can put breakpoints in your test. So this worked really fast, but if I would edit my test again, and then at the end, like we say revisit the news, and I add a line here. Then I break. And if I run my test, let's give it 2 lines for this. Okay, so my test will start running until it reaches the breakpoint. When it reaches the breakpoint, it will just wait in the console until I press return there. So in the meanwhile, I can use my browser. It will be in the state. See, my articles are here. I can see them. If, say, my classes were incorrect, then I can just like use the developer console, figure out the correct HTML, update my test, run my test again until the screen, and then you're done and you remove the JavaScript tag again. Now the drawback of Selenium is that it's really, really slow. Because obviously having the whole like megabytes of RAM that Firefox needs and all of its functionality, it's not really beneficial to your speed. So. But it's really, really handy. Okay, and then there is one final thing. So I have 5 minutes left. Yeah, I will be able to show it. So I wanted to talk about how does all this stuff work in Drupal 8. So Drupal 8. All of this was working really well until 2 weeks ago. There is a little problem with Drupal 8 and Behat, and the problem is in Composer. Drupal 8 is also using Composer to build its packages, but it's not using Composer correctly. Normally, if you use Composer, you would have a single Composer folder and a single vendor folder, a single Composer.json file. Actually, Drupal has its own Composer.json file in the core folder, Drupal 8. If Behat now bootstraps Drupal, so what actually happened is in Drupal 8 we added main and good to Drupal, and it's also in Behat. So Behat first starts running its loading good and main, then it bootstraps Drupal, which is loading good and main again, and then suddenly we have conflicts and it breaks. Now, it's not going to be so easy to solve, but there is a very excellent workaround for this, and it's called the Drupal project. Drupal project has been built by some really nice contributors to Drupal, and it's actually using Drupal as a dependency of your project. So instead of doing the old way, you start with a Drupal install and build on top of it. No, you would say like, I have my project and Drupal core is a dependency of my project. So you just put in your Composer.json a line that says Drupal core, as well as all your modules. So it's actually a replacement for Drush make. So you put all the modules that you use in that Composer file, run Composer install, like we did before. It will take a lot of time because it doesn't run all this stuff. And then you will have a folder called web, and your Drupal will be there. The really nice thing about this is that you have a single Composer folder, which means that it will work perfectly with Behat. Now, I got up this morning around 6 to make a demo for this, but I only have 4 minutes left. So I'm not sure if I can pull it off. Let's have a look. So I made a fork of the Drupal project, and I added support for Behat to it. So on GitHub, on my GitHub account, I will have a new repository fork from Drupal projects. So in here, I added see the tests folders here, and then we have the features and Behat stuff over there. So this morning I managed to make it work. So let's see if I can still make it work. So I'm using, because we have to generate this Behat of YAML file, for my work at the European Commission, I learned how to automate this stuff, and I'm using a PHP library for this, which is called Fing. Fing helps to automate any kind of task that you need to do on a website, in a project. So let's have a look. Alright, so here I have the Drupal project, which I've cloned from GitHub. So what do we see here? We have a Composer.json file, really important. Oh, look at that. Actually, the whole kit is not so really for me. Let's have a look. So Composer.json not only has Behat and Behat Drupal extension like we had before, but it also has, we have Drupal core here, we have Drush. We say already we require PHP 5.5.9, which is the current minimum requirement for Drupal 8. We have the coder module to do coding standards checks. We have the config update module, which is a new config module to help you with configuration of Drupal 8. The devel module, really nice for development, and some other stuff. So this morning I already ran Composer install. Okay, so I'm happy to see that I don't have to wait 15 minutes for all the stuff to download. It says like, okay, you're ready, there's nothing to install or update. So, with this thing library, which also works similar to Behat. So instead of vendor bin Behat, you now have vendor bin thing. If I execute this, then it will show me a number of commands that I can execute on my file. And one of these commands is like install a dev environment. Now, for my dev environment to work, the system needs to know a few things. These things are saved in a file which is called build.properties.local. I put all of this in the README file by the way, so you can read the README file. So what does my installation need to know? Obviously my database credentials, otherwise it cannot install my Drupal. It needs to know my base URL for Behat, and I can provide some additional options, and I gave the option to do verbose output of Drush when my installer is running, so that if any problems occur, I can figure out what goes wrong. I don't have the working directory of Drupal here, like we had to put in the Behat.yaml file, because this system will know when my Drupal site is installed. It will be in a subfolder of the project. So it will automatically generate a Behat.yaml file for us. It will actually generate everything, so there could be a PHP code sniffer, configuration, Drush will be set up. So even if you are deploying on a server that doesn't have Drush installed, it will be right there in your project folder and you can use it. And it will be the latest version that's suited for Drupal 8, so that's very nice. Okay, so I typed the command vendor bin thing install dev. So it's going to install Drupal using the database credentials that I provided, and it's going to set up my development environment for me. And this means it will save the Behat.yaml file and everything else. So I just downloaded the repository from GitHub, edited the build.properties.local file, and then I ran this command. Yeah, this of course takes a while, it's installing Drupal now. What's also nice about the verbose option is that you have something to look at while it's running, so it's less boring. So yeah, it's the first time I try this by the way, so I'm really hopeful that it will work. Okay, good. Build finished. 1 minute, 2.5 seconds. That's not too bad for a Drupal installation. Alright, let's see. If I go, if I type vendor Behat. Oh, feature context class not found in the node used. Let's fix it. I have an idea what goes wrong. So because I'm using Composer, I actually have to declare my namespaces. And this is also automated, but I might have to run a Composer update so it will generate around the autoloader namespaces for this. Anyway, the time is up. A little bit better. And I've also set up an option here which is called progress. So it's an output formatter. So normally if you use the default format it will output all the test steps. But if you change it to the progress format, then it will only output these dots. Okay, looking at these tests run by, it's very nice in the beginning, but once you get to like 500 tests, then it can be a little bit boring. So having these dots is fine. So actually, my tests have run successfully. So I haven't set up any yet of trouble. It's just been generated by Finn for me. I had to provide my database connection only in my Bayesian realm. So that's how it works in Drupal 8. And we have new people coming in, so that I think we use it. So thanks everybody. I hope it was useful. If you have any questions about this, we'll be around for the whole day and also tomorrow for a few hours. So welcome you to continue with your questions. So, and good luck with your Behat advances. And I had to say that we have a photo opportunity now outside, so photo. I don't know if it's actually right now or in a few minutes. Do you know the picture? The group photos at 12. Ah, yeah, it's just outside with this floor on the grass. On the balcony. Yeah.
Different systems. Trying to understand what's easier just to make it work anyway. Maybe it's just easier for people who create a Behat, but that was brilliant.
So what's happening is that